sometimes you get the chance to spend some time on the river with somebody, and Sandy Nelson's been a regular guest on the podcast, and I'm really thrilled to be, kneeling next to him on the river. We're on his favourite stretch of river. Would that be fair to say?
Definitely, absolutely. This is home for me. This is my safe space. Definitely. We moved up here so I could be closer to this, so I didn't have to drive so far, so I could come down, particularly on an evening, and then being 20 minutes from home, it's a nice easy drive. Once it's dark, and you're tired, it's not so bad. So yeah, definitely my favourite bit of the river.
And we were thinking about meeting tomorrow, but of course with these things weather plays a part. You've called this one. What was your thought process, and is that for you for these evening jaunts that's something that you're bearing in mind the whole time with? And I know, and while I've been up here, that the wind has been a little bit of an issue. Is that they're the things you're sort of analysing the whole time?
Well, the wind tomorrow, we were looking at it getting breezier and brighter. There was no cloud cover forecast, and the temperature's back up into the 20s again tomorrow. So even first thing in the morning might be okay, but I think after 10 a.m, there's going to be very little for us to find. So yes, today was warmer, less breeze. Felt like it was going to be. It had that feeling this morning when I was gardening this morning with my wife, and it just had that feel. And I thought, let's make it tonight rather than tomorrow morning. And yeah, so again, that's why I like to be close to it, so you can sort of make that decision at the last minute. It was great that you were able to just sort of say, it's easy. We'll just go as and when. And I think this time of the year we might get a bigger window. June, July, it can be a really tight window right on dark for about 20 minutes. Maybe we'll get some sedge action, but there's that many olive upright spinners about this afternoon and this evening. I think we'll get spinner fall as well at some point during the evening. Might even get a very early blue-winged olive hatch. It's possible. There's in yellow maize, we might see some up here, not so much up this end of the river. Where you're staying, yes, lots of yellow maize. You'll see Danica. There is one or two of them here, but they're not at this end. We'd have to be further down the bottom end of this beat. So
what I'd love to do is pick your brains a little bit, because I know people listening, we talk about evening rises, heading out in the evening, and we're sitting here and we've barely made. Sandy's caught a fish, I've missed a few, and it seems to me that reconnaissance we talk about a lot on here, and you said to me earlier that you just love watching the whole time.
I could sit here and watch all evening, to be fair. It's quiet. We've got the birds. We've got lovely surroundings. We've got the hills in the background. But the river, it's hypnotic, isn't it? You can't help but watch it. And it is interesting that there is fish here and there. Not as many as I would like yet, but there are definitely fish here and there at the moment. I'm just wondering, the bit we're sitting on at the moment is usually quite a good spot. But there's an even better spot about, how far would that be from here?
Not far.
100 feet
yeah.
Further up.
Yeah.
Very tempted to kind of bypass this at the moment, because I haven't seen anything in here for the last 5 minutes, and just go up and sit and watch the tail of that, because I know there's been a good fish sitting in there for the last couple of weeks.
And that's where the reconnaissance plays off, doesn't it? And will you often, when you see that, and we're sitting waiting here and putting it in context for people, that the river, as we look upstream, we're standing on the true right bank if we were looking downstream, but as we're looking upstream, there's a sort of a little run, there's a little smooth right turn in the river, just a gentle right turn, and there's a riffle down in, and then where we're sitting on the bank, there's some slow, sticky water. Where,
which is, it's not even a very big pool, is it? It's maybe 30, 40 feet, the actual pool part. We're just sitting at the tail of it just now watching, because you get a great view. You can see all the way up and into the next pool up, and if there is anything rising further up, we can spot that from here as well without disturbing anything. So there's finding a good observation spot that allows you to cover a lot of the river can be a big advantage as well, especially when it's open like this. We don't have so many trees up this end.
Yeah, there's looking at this pool, and as Sandy described, the flatter bit, similar sort of style of a pool there with the main flow coming down towards our bank along there. So nice thick bubble line where you'd expect a fish to be. And it is easy, isn't it? You know, you've had a hard day at work and you got some time on the river, and the temptation probably is to make a few casts in there and you might bring someone up. But there is the chance that you're probably going to put someone down too, isn't there?
Just, I would say you're 50-50 on that. It depends which way how you're oriented. I know quite a few guys who would dive straight and then chuck a nymph through that because there's nothing rising, but you could throw the dry through it. You could bring one up. I think it's unlikely. I think anything that's likely to rise at the moment are the ones we're spotting. If we get some sedges hatching later, there could be fish popping for those as well. It could change. We might have to change tactics completely. We just have to wait and see, really.
So for listeners, I wanted to talk a little bit about your setup, just broadly speaking. And I know in the next Fly Culture that you've written about a little anniversary for you from a rod building point of view. Do you want to just hint a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, that was kind of cool. I'm really pleased that it turned into a nice little article, to be honest, because that was quite a moment for me. I've been building fiberglass rods for nearly 15 years, on and off, and that was us. That was me. I recognised that I was reaching that milestone, which was quite a significant one over the winter. So I manipulated my order list so that I could make that particular rod was going to be that number when I built it was going to be this a special one, and I do it for myself. So I don't know how much of a hint you want me to give, because it was a special blank that I got from Nico, and he made me a special rail seat for it, and I got special guides made by Callum Gladstone, and it all kind of came together really nicely.
And that's not the rod. So what have you got today that you're fishing with?
I have a Winston Pure 2 with me at the moment, which I've just not long finished. Again, I got the blank from Mark Beisler in Germany, who's now a Winston dealer. I got a handful of blanks to keep me amused because I've been off work for a few weeks. But yes, they've all turned out, they're all beautiful rods to fish, but for this part of the river, this is the 8'3" for a 4-weight, and it's just perfect. It's a perfect dry fly rod for the river that's this size, where it's maybe 25-30 feet across, maybe 40 at a push. You're fishing no more than 20-30 feet. And it's got all the backbone. Should be lucky enough to run into one of these, one of the Don Beauties that are up here.
And with Winston rods, it always strikes me that they've got this mythical following popularity that's never really worked in the UK in the way that it should. Do you think that's because possibly Winston, for them, UK is such a tiny market that they've not diverted attention? Has there not been the interest from UK people on it? Because obviously there's other US brands that have done well in the UK, but that's one that probably should do, shouldn't it?
Yeah, well, in my eyes, yes. I mean, I'm obviously a big fan of glass, so I like my rods smooth. I like them to bend a little bit deeper, which is exactly what Winston does. I mean, if you go back, the Winstons we fish now and what most people think of as Winstons have come from Twin Bridges in Montana, and Tom Morgan was the owner when they got into graphite. And I think his influence, I mean, I love Tom Morgan's glass. His designs are just fantastic. They're beautiful things to fish with. So I guess I've always had an affinity for Winston's own their carbon rods as well, for the same reason. I think the earlier ones were maybe a little bit soft, the multi-piece ones, for my personal taste. Everybody's different. This current generation, though, I built a couple of Air 2s, I built a couple of Pure 2s, and even the Air 2s, which is the fast one, is a fast rod to cast with, but when you catch a fish, it bends deep, it's got soft tip, it just does what you want it to, really. Why they're not that popular in the UK? I know the dealership's been held by a few people over the years. They're always beautifully made. They usually beautiful fit-ins, fixtures, great cork, nicely finished. Probably that perceived performance thing. You know, it's a river rod. It's for doing exactly what we're doing tonight, which I would be inclined to suggest most people would do if they went on the river and fished. But I still think a lot of people, when they go out to buy something, they go and buy the best performance they can. You know, but you don't buy a Ferrari to go off-road, so... well, I suppose you can now.
Yeah, or a Senge or whatever it's called. Yeah, you can. I just wonder, and I wonder if part of that was that the stiff rod thing, when they had a little bit more visibility in the UK, the stiff rod thing was becoming more of a thing, and perhaps that may have pushed them out a little bit. I'm just fascinated to know, because I love all these other brands that we know about a little bit that we don't see so much, so it's always wonderful to see those. So that's the tackle bit out of the way from a rod point of view. What about the leader and stuff? How are you're saying that you're not making long casts, so what does that mean from a leader length and strength perspective?
Well, I have a 14-foot tapered leader super glued into the end of the fly line. It ends in a tip. It's a 5x. It's a 5x leader. It's trout hunters. That was a fish just here. Look, just in front of us. That was so it's a 5x 14-foot trout hunters Rennie Harrop leader. It's got a tippet ring on the end, and I've got about 2.5 feet of 5.5x tippet, and that's it. It is as simple as that. I've got a Barrio trout stream line on, which has a 30-foot head. It's two-tone, and if you see that light green off the reel tonight, I'd be really surprised. Only if I hook a fish, probably. The chances I'll be fishing within that head all night, and probably not much off the front taper, which is why the softer action rods are really good, because you can load them. The rods will load themselves a little bit more.
And do you think that's something that people could easily be guilty of, is ripping a load of line off the reel, perhaps to get the rod to work for them as well, but also casting a little bit too far? Because you can get relatively, if you're careful, you can get relatively close to these fish, can't you?
Yeah, well, you can see that now. I mean, we're sitting here, we're chatting on the mic, but with a fish that's no more than 30 feet in front of us. And here he goes again. That's his tail just came up that time. It might actually be a slightly better fish, maybe. Don't know. It's the second time he's risen in the last 2 or 3 minutes or so. That's a good sign. I've seen a couple further up in the pool as well. So, yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't fish very far anyway. That's why glass always suits me quite well. The graphite experiment again this year. So I went back to Winston this time, because my last graphite experiment was with some of the newer sages, and I couldn't get them to work on the right. Way further down where you were having to cast 40, 50, 60 feet, yes, but up here, no. No, they're not really designed for this kind of fishing, unfortunately. And they should be. I haven't tried the new that R8 Classic that they've just brought out. That might be interesting, because it's supposed to be softer than the new LL in terms of its tip, and it bends a bit deeper. So that could be a little bit more in keeping with what you'd expect. But I know on the scale, when you look at it, they reckon that R2 class is still stiffer than what these pure 2s are. So that, according to the Americans who do all the reviews anyway, and they'll probably be not far off the mark.
And you've alluded to as well, we've touched on previously as well, that the ability to, like you say, with a short amount of line, long leader, but also that ability, and people who follow Sandy's socials, his pictures have been in the magazine, in his articles and pictures at the front of the magazine that are good size fish. And it's that ability to play the fish as well, and that deeper bending rod definitely works better, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, for the bulk of the fight, it doesn't make a great deal of difference. The initial take, yes, when it makes that first run, the rod taking a lot of the shock out of it helps a lot. And what I find, it's usually those last 2 ones, as you're trying to put it in the net, and it just decides it takes one look at you and kicks its tail, and that generally when you go ping, and you lose it right at the net, so you've seen it, and it's sort of like, that's your moment. That's your moment. Going, okay, you're going to put it back anyway. But it's always nice to get them in the net and have a good look at the spots and admire them. But yes, I think it's that moment more than anything else where that softer action, that deeper action with the rods, nice. It gives you the much better shock absorber for that moment.
And we've seen, so what are you thinking right now that we've seen while we've been talking? I've not seen the fish because I've been poking the mic in your face, but what is your thought process now that you've seen a fish rise a couple of times? Are you getting targeted in on it, or are you going to wait a little bit more?
Well, a couple of times would be enough for me. I know some guys like to sit and watch and make sure they're regular feeders. I think sometimes I tend to be of the school that if there's a rising fish, the first time you see the rise, you're generally catching it out of the corner of your eye and you're responding to something almost instinctively. Then you can watch an area, and then the second rise sort of identifies where it is. And at that point, I would normally, I would have had a cast at this by now if we weren't sitting talking on the mic, but it's because it hasn't come up again, but it's probably still in the vicinity. So I think if you covered it with a fly, it would probably come up. Although the last one was just a tail, so it might have even been nymphing. But with all these spinners about, I would be more inclined to expect it to take a spend.
And are you tempted now to give it a go?
I am very tempted to go and just flick the fly across there and put it through that. It's just there in that riffle. It would be interesting to see if it would come up and take the fly.
Do you want to see if you can do it?
Go on then. You already know the answer to that.
Yeah, it didn't take much prompting, that one. It's wonderful to see him. And what I'm going to try my utmost to do, I've got my dog with me as well. He's sitting very quietly on the bank here as well. He's probably might walk along the bank. He doesn't get into the water unless perhaps Sandy gets the fish, but he'll generally leave it alone. So he's sitting there quietly. So Sandy's itching. So I'm going to let him get into position, and I'm going to try and talk you through what's happening. So what we've got on this pool, yeah, he said no pressure, but what we've got on this pool is that little right turn that I've said to you. It's a very gentle right turn. As it comes down onto that riffle, to the right of that riffle there's a rock, and that's sort of forcing that flow more to our side of the river and to the shallower side as well. But he's quietly walking out into place now, and you can have you got studs on, Sandy? Yeah, he's got studs, so you can't hear him. I was just interested to know. I know some people are against him. He's got a wading staff as well, just in case. The water is very, very low, and he's wading now, and it's probably shin deep. So for me, that's probably knee deep, but for Sandy, that's just shin deep. There are spinners in the air, and he's just force casting out the line now to the spot where he thinks the fish is. The dog's come sit with me while that's happening. So do you think you covered him there, Sandy? He's not so sure he covered it on that first one. So he's just made another cast out again. He's adding slack into the line because there is complex flows here as well. So he's just making sure. I think they're precautionary slack more than anything else. He said he's probably struggling. It's a really funny light. I had sunglasses on, but it's really hard to spot a fly in these conditions right now. So it's just that, yeah, that looks a good spot there, but nothing that time. Nothing that time. And that's a good tip, actually, that if you can't see the fly, look to the end of the fly line. That's going to get you into the vicinity, and you're going to be in the ballpark there. And then it's worth, if you're not seeing that fly, work on the basis that there's probably some drag in there as well. So put some precautionary slack in there just to give you some insurance should you need it. And he's actually making a reach cast now, so he's putting even more slack in. So as the line goes out, he's taking his rod upstream and giving himself a better drift again. But it doesn't look as though, perhaps we missed that moment with that fish having a look. As I said, I didn't see the rise, so it's hard for me to know where he is, but I can see exactly where he's working at the moment. But yeah, he thinks he's covered it a couple of times, but no dice this time. So what are you thinking now, Sandy? Yeah, he's going to leave it alone. So he's going to hold fire for a little bit, and I guess he's probably going to head in. There's one, of course you've got to make one last cast, just in case. But no dice there on that occasion. So it looked like you covered that perfectly. I talked with people there and you'd said that you struggled seeing the fly a little bit, but the interesting observation I made from it was that you were putting sort of precautionary slack in because you couldn't see the fly. Was that going through your mind?
Yeah, definitely. I wasn't sure whether it was dragging or not, so I was trying to put in as much slack as I could in case there was any drag. When I got down there, I don't know if you noticed, I hunkered down quite a bit. I was able to look across the water and I could pick the fly up when I was doing that, so it was easier to see. So I could see I was covering the fish. I did cover it 3 or 4 times there, but it hasn't risen again. So I may have spooked that when I got in the river. It may be doing something altogether different. It could just be timing, who knows. It's still a bit early in the evening yet, but you never know. It's one to remember for when we're on our way back to the car anyway.
One of the things I noticed was your ability to spot fish as well. That, I guess, because you're used to it. Also the sunglasses as well. Are you choosing sunglasses because of their ability in these light conditions?
Yeah, I wear Polaroids all the time, but I usually wear yellow ones. They're like happy glasses, make everything look nice and warm as well, which helps when you live up here. But yes, I find yellow is a high contrast. Even in bright sun, I tend to use yellow glasses. So it just helps out a little bit because a lot of the fish you're looking for a nose or a tail or a fin, or especially with the better ones. Smaller ones will tell you where they are, but a lot of the better ones, you've got to be looking at the right spot at the right time, and it does help. Definitely.
That's a good tip too. And of course, I wear rose colour tinted ones, yeah, and the world seems okay through those as well. But it was interesting that I'd seen you mention those, and it took me a little bit to see what you'd seen, and so that's one of the reasons that I asked that. So what are you thinking now that you've been in? You made 2 or 3 casts, then as you were leaving you made a slightly longer one in case the fish had moved up a little bit. Is that one off the radar now and we wait some more, or do we move up?
We'll move now. We'll go up and we'll go and sit up by that fence post that we can see up there and have a watch at the tail end of that faster water up there, because I know there's a good fish sitting up there at the moment that hasn't been caught in the last 3 weeks, because I've tried several times.
That means I've got absolutely no hope at it, so I'm going to leave it to there. And it's going to be really cool if something plays out. It doesn't matter if it doesn't, but just to get the chance to spend time with somebody I wanted to spend time with first off, but also to see how they fish their home river and how confident, because home confidence makes a huge difference, doesn't it? This is just like a section I'd never have seen before. I probably would have sat here like you have and waited in a similar sort of way, but those little subtleties, and of course knowing that there's a fish up there that perhaps you're going to try and target a little bit later if he comes on the feed. Those things help, don't they? The experience, but also what it does is make you a little bit more confident as well, doesn't it?
Definitely. Completely. Having the, I think, yes, home water does make you more confident. I think that's why sometimes if you are on very strange water, so it is often good to hire a guide because it's their home water, and they can stop and they'll just say, well, some people might just walk past this because it's not very deep. But we have seen several fish in it. We've had a couple. The next bit is more typical for somewhere that we would stop. You would off your own back. So yeah, I would completely agree with that. It's definitely home river confidence has a lot to do with it, especially when you're after the better fish.
Absolutely. And I thought about it last night where I've been staying and where I've been fishing, that I'm sort of playing the odds more so because I don't really know. I didn't know what was going to happen in the evening, how late it might go, it may not happen. And so those things, so there's not that sort of thing. So, right, I think this is what happened a couple of nights ago or the night before or even perhaps the week ago. You've got the sense of the hatch where fish are, where they're happy. These little spots, the little nuances on the river, like you say, you could easily walk by. And does that tell us when we walk up the river to walk incredibly slowly?
Sometimes. I think it's difficult because obviously we covered quite a bit of ground getting up here, and I just walked past all of it because I know it's relatively, with the river at this height, you know, it would have been different if it had another 18 inches of water in it. We could have fished quite a few spots on the way up and probably found fish. At the moment, they're going to be focused in areas like this where there's a little bit more depth, there's a bit more current coming through, so it's going to be a bit cooler, there's more oxygen. They've got cover they can go and hide. It's the same when we get further up. There's a couple of nice spots on that next pool further up where they've got a bit of depth. They've got somewhere to go and escape from predators because we've got big open sky up here, and we do have ospreys. We've got 2 families of ospreys live up here, so they do get predated on from above. So it's more things like that than anything else, especially in these conditions. There's about 4 spots on the way up here. We're only on the first one. We've got another 3 to get to yet. So I am keen to keep moving, and we'll have a look at the next bit and see what's happening there. But we'll cover them all on the way back to the car as well. So as it gets a bit later, and hopefully some of these spinners start to drop.
We stood a good distance back from the water here, and it's the next pool up that Sandy was mentioning and we're watching. One of the things he mentioned was the lack of water, which we're all suffering with at the moment. And I'm sort of kind of looking at a river. I could imagine it a little bit higher, but of course I'm not seeing that. So I'm seeing what's in front of me. But does that make it the way that you're looking at things slightly different?
Not really. I mean, we're heading towards the end of May now anyway, so a lot of the spots would be summer level spots anyway. That's kind of what we're doing. We're kind of covering what would be normal summer level fishing. It is low. I think I was reading a thing the other day from the D fishery board that was saying it was the lowest. The D is currently the second lowest it's been in history, and it's sort of the lowest since 1938. I was in Ballater last week for a drive, and we stopped and looked over the bridge, and it was just astonishing how low it actually was. I think the Don's possibly not as low, relatively speaking, as what the D currently is. There'll be some reason for that, probably to do with the way the water is generated where it comes from. But yes, it is still, I mean, some of the rocks we're seeing here would normally, even at summer levels, there would be riffles. You'd see the riffle off the top of the rock, but you wouldn't be seeing the tops of the rocks. That's why they're so covered in weed, most of them. They're not normally exposed. So yes, even another 6 inches of water in this, and it would be quite different, but not a lot. Not a lot. And I say we'd still be looking at the same. We'd still be stopping in the same places and watching the same areas. And we might just have a few more to look at on the way up.
Does that mean that you're going to target things slightly differently from that point of view, that the fish are going to be a lot more spooky? Are you thinking about setups? Are you thinking about fly sizes? Does that come into play, or you're just dealing the hand that you're dealt, or playing the hand that you're dealt, and working with that? And of course the fish have got to eat as well, haven't they? So that's the clue that we're looking for right now, and it's choosing those right spots to actually focus on and look for those fish.
Yeah, I think, let's see, the hatches are about a week or 2 ahead of where they normally are, but we're still getting the hatches. So I know that tonight we've got olive upright spinners, so I don't need to go below a 14 really to cover the fish. I think maybe the slightly bigger one you had on earlier was it was certainly getting attention, but they were splashing at it rather than actually taking it. Probably because it was maybe just a fraction too big. There's no real need to go tiny. I mean, later on this evening, as we head towards dusk, if we get sedges on the go, we might even go up a size. We might be up to 12s possibly. It's more likely it'll be 14s, 16s this time of the year anyway. So I don't think the hatches have changed in that respect. So the flies are not really any different. Maybe if we were here in the afternoon, I think this end of the river would probably be pretty much devoid of anything moving at all, because it's too exposed, it's too bright, we don't have that many trees. But where you're staying down at Tillyfour and Moneymusk and all that, you've got lots of woodland, so you'd be on Paul's current kick of his green fly and everything falling off the trees. I think that would probably be really legitimate way to catch him, but there's nowhere for them to come from up here. So it is a slightly different river up this end, because we are quite a bit up, and we're probably 15-20 miles up from the mid-river, which could be a bit ambitious this time of the year, but there are fish here, so they don't seem to have followed the smolts down this year, possibly because of the low water. We just have to find some arising, I think.
There's a couple of things that you've mentioned there, and I know in the car and on the phone not so long ago you were talking about the smolt migration and the impact it had on the trout. They obviously are around in lots of rivers. I think this was a great observation that you have made about them based on knowledge, experience, and do you want to share that a little bit about the smolts?
I mean, it's largely empirical, but yes, over the last 20, 30 years of paying attention to what's going on in the river, when the smolts appear, usually the back end of April, early May, the bigger trout tend to switch off the flies, and they'll start, why would they bother feeding on olives when they've got pure protein swimming past them in large shoals? And historically, we usually get a bit of water at the end of April. There's normally a week or so where we get a bit of a rise in the river, and it actually usually washes you out. If you time it wrong, you'll get washed out for one of the weeks in April. That hasn't happened this year. And that tends to clear a lot of the smolts downstream. They'll all move downstream, and a lot of the big fish will go down with them. Some will stay put. My personal feelings is, I think quite a few of the bigger trout in the Don, some of them live and they'll stay in the same pool most of their lives, and they're slow growing and they're beautiful golden fish. And they are a different colour. And then there's a lot of the other bigger ones are more blue. There's quite a hatch coming off just now. I'm just watching flies hatching at the moment. Always distracted. The bluer fish, which tend to be a bit lighter, less rich in terms of colour, they'll often disappear when the smolts appear. And I think they follow the smolts downstream, hang around the lower reaches, and then when the sea trout run up the end of May, early June, they tend to follow the sea trout back up the river, and you'll start to see them again. About August time, you'll start to see the big trout. You'll get the big trout in amongst the sea trout as well, rising for the sedges on a night in some of the middle river baits. And I think that's this year, because of the low water, we seem to have more fish. When you do see them rising, we have seen more bigger fish up this end of the river this year, certainly than the last couple of years. And I think that's possibly the low water. Some of them just haven't bothered to follow the smolts downstream. They've just they took their feed on their way past, and then they've switched back onto the flies. But we didn't have much in the way of high water during the winter either. So the river didn't get a good scour through during the winter time. And the Granham hatch this year was the biggest Granham hatch I've ever seen. I've been on the river for 40 years now. I've seen big Granham hatches, but it was amazing. There was billions of them. So I think a lot of the insects haven't been shifted either. So there's plenty of food. So the fish don't need to go chasing the smolts. There's plenty for them to eat this year. They're just picking their timing because of at least it is staying cooler. The water isn't warm. it's still only running about 14 degrees because it's been dropping to 5 during the night, so that's keeping the temperature down. That's helping with a low water. But yeah, I think on the whole it's definitely unusual, and I think a lot of rivers are the same, aren't they, at the moment? So
I know even when I fish my home water, when I'm searching for fish, I sort of have a patrol pattern, really, that I'm looking for a spot where one of them will tell me the mood of the river, and then I'm continually looking for that moment. Is this what we're kind of doing right now?
that's kind of what we were doing. That first spot we were on there, that was kind of my gauge. That's where I sit and gauge what flies are coming down, what the fish might be feeding on, because there's usually 2 or 3 fish in there feeding. And then we'll wander up, we'll have a look at this bit here, the bit just behind us as well, but I've not seen anything moving there yet either. And we've got another 2 bits there, and then we've got another bit very similar to this up around the corner, and we'll go and have a look at that as well. And just one of them hopefully will have some more moving fish, although I mean, I don't know what the time is, but we're probably still relatively early in the evening at the moment.
Yep, we're at 8:20. So when do you feel? Because I'm guessing it stays lighter longer, does it?
Yeah. Well, it'll be about 10:30 before it gets dark tonight. But I would think any time between 9 and 10 is going to be our window for this evening. That's what I would have expected before we came out. So having seen some fish rising already was quite good. It'll just depend on that temperature, and whether it drops like a rock when the sun disappears or whether it just sort of mellows out. If it just mellows out, we'll be laughing. Hopefully.
Just been walking up the river. We crossed to the other side because the telegraph poles that Sandy mentioned earlier are now on the far bank. So we're on the true left bank as you look downstream. And he's seen a fish rise. But we were just chatting. He said he was amazed that there's only a couple of people, he's one of them, that fish this far up the river. And it's not a hugely long walk or anything like that. But what does that mean for you from a fishing pressure perspective? Now, we've seen a fish rise and
it isn't going to go anywhere.
And so are you going to go and have a go?
In a minute.
There's
no rush. I'd like to see this one come up more than twice after the last one.
Yeah. So we're going to wait this one out for a couple of seconds. But what does that mean then do you notice anything about those fish? You know, you've talked about predators like ospreys. We've talked about how low the water is. But from an angling pressure point of view, because there's only really a couple of you heading up this way, do you notice that in any way?
I'd say so. Yeah, I think it's one of them things, isn't it? It's a lot of people will park their cars and they tend to not walk that far from the car park. A handful of people will walk for miles and miles and miles, and they generally see different things. You see more fish, and I'm not so sure. I think maybe it's to do with being he just rose again. Look. Whether it's to do with, and again, he's steady feeding this one. I don't know how to answer the question.
Let's concentrate on the fish. You go and see if you can catch that fish.
Totally distracted.
Yeah, no, well, you go for the fish. That's much more important. So we'll see if he goes again. Why don't you go and have a go for him?
See where he's at.
Yeah. I've seen one go against the bank as well.
Yeah, further up.
Yeah.
I saw one go further up as well.
But yeah, we're watching closely. We've seen him, what's that, 4 times? Four times now, 4 or 5 times now. So Sandy's going to get into position and we're going to see if we can find a fish. So that was relatively straightforward. Sandy got into position. He's seen a good fish rise as well. Got into position, knelt down, took a sip of water, waited, 1 cast, fish rose, fish on. That's how it works, isn't it?
Yeah. When it goes right, yeah, absolutely. It's exactly how you want it to go. I thought I'd actually spooked it. I was just about to start talking about how being so far from the car, fish tend to be less spooky, I find. And I was sitting there kneeling on the rock thinking, I've spooked this fish going in the water because it hasn't come up, and then it rose a couple of times. And I thought, excellent. But yes, And that was less than a rod length away from me. Oh my God, here you go. There's another one. I think we've got a bit of a hatch started, which should be kind of cool. It'll be your turn next to go and get a fish.
I think I might have a go at that, actually.
So.
Yeah, that might be on the cards.
That was a better fish as well. There's another one.
Yeah. There's.
Sometimes it can be just wandering until you find the pool where there's a little bit of action going on. I think we can see quite a few fish moving on this one now, whether it's a timing thing, but I think it could be just the right spot.
So I'd seen the rise, got into position. Fish didn't rise again. So I covered it, but nothing doing. Waited a little bit longer. We talked about some caddis being around, and I thought it seemed as though it went quiet after we'd seen some caddis, so we hadn't seen any for a little bit and it'd gone quiet. So I put on a caddis, and again, all very, very quiet. Feels a little bit cooler now. The time is 9:10. It's light as anything still. I amazed myself that I tied a fly on without any issues, but it looks though Sandy's seen something upstream, so he's getting himself into position now. So yeah, I think he's seen something. We were just talking off mic a few seconds ago, and I was saying the fish that we'd seen rise a couple of times, and then of course when I went out stopped rising. Because I don't know the water so well, my instinct was I'd covered it with something I think was similar to what Sandy had on, not quite the same pattern. Here's his own tide pattern that works really well for him. But because I wasn't sure, I changed, and we'd seen the caddis, so I put a small stimulator on just to see if I could bring the fish up, which didn't work either. But you're quite happy with what you're fishing with, and that's working well. Is that a policy you have a lot of the time? Are you I tend to change flies relatively quickly if I think if I've covered the fish well and it hasn't come up, and I will be thinking about a change, but that's not necessarily the case for yourself.
No, it's not the way I would normally fish, no. I tend to, when we first arrived, we were standing on the bridge, so we knew there was olive upright spinners on the go. So I've opted for what is a rusty olive semi-spent. It's like a triple wing spinner, but the wings are kicked up slightly, so it kind of looks a little bit like a dun, but a little bit like a spinner, a little bit like a cripple. And it's sort of a rusty, it's a mixture of olive and orange, so it kind of covers all the bases. And I think if you turn a lot of the spinners upside down anyway, you'll find they've got a sort of dirty yellow belly rather than being orange anyway. So I've just stuck that on in a 14 because that's roughly the size the fly's on, and I'll just, unless we see them kick on to caddises, I'll probably just keep this on all night.
Makes perfect sense to me. Home skill, home knowledge, and it worked.
It works, yeah.
Again, we were just chatting, and I was saying I wonder my change was quick because we don't have ephemera, aren't so much, the upwings aren't so much a part of the diet for where I fish a lot of the time. So perhaps it is a confidence thing for me as well that I'm not fishing them so much. But Sandy showed me his pattern and then opened his fly box, and I think probably not a lot of patterns in there, really, are there?
No, not really. I think there's the olive's in, it's essentially the same fly. It's in orange, it's in a light olive, and it's in a rusty olive. And that's about half the fly box taken care of straight away. Then there's a sedge in sizes from 12 to 18, and I've got my CDC spider in there, and that's pretty much it. A handful of terrestrials just in case. And that basically is it.
And you were saying that that the rusty spinner has accounted for most of your fish.
Definitely the rusty olive one last season, between the orange one, if the orange one didn't work, then the rusty olive one was working. And pretty much for any of the rising fish we've got in here, because we've got quite a wide variety of ephemera, it just seemed to cover all the bases. And the only time I needed the really light one was if there was something particularly pale on the go. Like our small dark olives are really, really light. And And that's about it. The rest of the time, everything's sort of that dirty yellow colour, so they're all dirty yellow, different sizes. CDC spiders in March into April, March browns mostly. And I think, last season, most of it was all on this little polywing dun, which is, I can't remember who tied it. It's in Kelly Gallup's Cripples and Spinners book, in orange anyway, and I just tied them in a few different colours. I can usually see them as well, which helps. They stand out quite well, but because it's more of a V than a flat wing, it sits in the surface, which also helps. Makes a big difference.
And do you think that because that fly works, I'm always interested to know about the confidence aspect of a fly as well. And that works really, really well for you. You're going to catch a bunch of fish on it. So you can tie that on with a degree of confidence. And how much do you think of a part that is that tying that fly on and feeling confident is part of it?
Yes. It's also my river. I know the flies, so I'm perfectly confident of deciding almost before I go out. I know roughly what I'm going to fish with. Be surprised if I went for anything else. Like tonight, I knew I'd put that on. That's why it went on to start with. And then it was a case of if we see sedges later on, I'll probably go into a little ex-caddis, and that'll be about it.
And it really is that simple. And yeah, if you have, I often ask this question on the podcast a lot of times about, do people carry many fly patterns? And the answer, I think, is probably 99.9% of the time is no. So I'm sure there is something like that. And I think if you have a smaller fly box, you learn to use it well. And as a result of that, you probably become confident with those patterns that you've got in it as well. So I think that makes life perhaps a little bit easier for you as well. It's coming up 9:30 now, and we're sort of at that tipping point. Do we stay here for a bit, see if something happens, or do we head back? Is there anything your gut's telling you?
My gut is we've seen fish on here, and although it's gone a little bit quiet at the moment, I would fancy our chances that there'll be fish. I mean, we have to walk past all the other spots to go back to the car, but I don't normally leave rising fish.
There's the tip of the day, I think. It's 10 o'clock. There's still some light in the sky, and we've waited, and then we waited some more just to see if anyone was going to rise, if something might happen. But it hasn't on this occasion. But do you know what? I don't care one bit, because we've just been standing talking about everything and nothing and enjoyed every second of it. The dog's been whinging a bit to go home, but he's just had a great burst of energy and is running round. He's 9 years old and he's running round like a puppy at the moment. He's absolutely loving every second of it. So the fish, we've got to walk past some of those sweet pools, so we're going to do that. See if anyone shows at the surface. But the temperature has changed a bit now, Sandy. The feel has changed, hasn't it?
The feel's definitely changed now. Definitely temperature dropping quite significantly. You can feel it in your fingers, you can feel it in your toes. You've got your hood up now. So, yeah, I'm not expecting a lot. Oh, watch up, he says. There's a cracking fish just rose just in the back of there.
This is yours, Maestro. Right, well, there we go. There we go. So, who knows? Who knows? Sandy slides into the water. I can hear owls. The sound of the river. And perhaps we're going to see what happens. He's making a cast from the bank right now. Said he spotted that fish rise just as we were sort of signing off, thinking perhaps this might be it. Is something going to happen? I don't know. He sends a cast out, and there's a rock, and it's splitting the flow, and it's on the outside edge of the rock. He's covered it. Yes. Oh, he's got the fish, but it was a smaller one there. And well, what about that though? That's almost a perfect sign that it might not have been the fish that we thought it might have been. Do you think that was the one, Sandy? No, he said no. Very definitely not. So we might be. He got that one in very, very quickly. I'm holding on to the dog just in case the water erupts. I had a go at where Sandy had seen that better fish rise with the caddis, but no joy for me. I think one's had a look. Was that to you, or was it? Yeah, it's hard to tell now because it's quite dark, so it's quite hard to tell whether the fish are us. It was close to where he was, but so it's again Sandy's pattern. I'd covered. That was another fish that had risen nearer the bank. The river's not very wide here at all, and again it makes me think about Sandy's rod choice, which is absolutely spot on for this size of river. It's, what's it, 40 foot across? Yeah, 40 foot across. Looking downstream, a bit of mist on the river now. The bats have come out. So perhaps we might be game afoot, but yeah, maybe Sandy's pattern again is the winner. I thought, again, the rises have been splashy. I thought, oh, perhaps there is a hint of caddis about this, and said, can I have a quick go? But that made absolutely no difference whatsoever. So we'll see what happens. Sandy's going to cast there again, see if that guy comes again, but hard to see. You can't see the fly on the water at all. But we'll keep. That's another cast just going out now. Again, the mend shoring in these conditions, you're sort of flying by, well, feel more than anything else, because you can't really see the fly in the water, but you're thinking, right, okay, I've got to think about how I'm going to get the fly down as drag-free drift as possible, and that's what Sandy's working on right now. Whether that fish comes or not is another matter. I'm tempted to have a wander downstream, see if there's anyone rising there to let him go at that one. It's 5 to 11. The mist has come down. We've heard a few noises in the dark and thrown casts at them. The bats are out as well. The owls are on the go, as Sandy says, and I've just had an absolute ball. That has been fantastic, Sandy. Thank you for showing me your home water. I was saying as we were walking back, it's pretty much dark now. And I said to him that you would probably be able to walk back with your eyes closed anyway, which you proved perfectly as well. But I can see why you're so proud of the water. And you did such an amazing job. The fish was sort of almost on, but not quite there, were they, tonight? Would be a fair description, do you think?
Absolutely. That's exactly how I would have described it. Almost, but not quite. It was hinting all night, wasn't it? The smaller ones got going, and then we had that little brief flurry when we were on mic up at the top end. There was a brief flurry there. I got that fish. There was 3 or 4 started rising. It lasted about long enough for us to get into position on the next ones, and then they just went quiet again. And walking back to the car, we had another couple that showed just in one of the pools, but again, little wee one grabbed it before I got a chance to go over the decent one. I missed the second one. That's the way it goes. Beautiful evening to be out. It's like you say, we've still got the remnants of the light. The sky's still blue, sort of. Just it's been an absolute pleasure. Really enjoyable evening. Good company with Monty there, even though he tried to eat me fish. But that was a most enjoyable evening, I think, and I'm glad you enjoyed it, because I say this is this whole bit we've just walked tonight. This my hidey hole. This is where I come and get away from everyone, because it's peaceful, it's quiet, stunning, serene scenery all around, and you never quite know what you're going to catch. It throws up quite a few surprises.
I'm not surprised at that, and just being able to see it. And there's always a pressure when you show somebody your home water and you want somebody to like it like you do. And I get why Sandy likes it. It's absolutely stunning. Fantastic. We ground them out. I had one on briefly at the end that I threw across to the other side that showed it was a small fish, and as I was bumping it across, I was fishing from the bank, and as it was bumping across, that came off. But I don't care. I just don't care. And this whole trip for me has been about me and Monty having experience, and tonight's been a perfect example of it, in great company. We've tried to give a little bit of, I've tried to pick Sandy's brains about what he knows about fishing this time of night that I hope you found useful. I hope you've enjoyed this. I've certainly loved every minute of it. I'm tired. Monty and I think are going to sleep well tonight. And then I guess we'll go fishing again tomorrow. But I hope you've enjoyed this. This was an off-the-cuff one. Sandy and I were just talking, and I said, this is too good just to have as part of it should be a standalone podcast. So it's been great to be able to have an impromptu episode that just happened with people meeting up and being able to fish with people that you really enjoy fishing with. And that's been really, really fun. I hope you've enjoyed this one anyway, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Fly Culture Podcast. Sandy, thank you for letting me poke the mic in your face as well. It was a bit impromptu, but thank you for sharing your wise words of wisdom.
You're more than welcome. I've thoroughly enjoyed this evening, even if I'm a bit it can be a bit funny at times, but yeah, it's been most enjoyable. Cheers.
Everyone, this has been another episode of the Fly Culture Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Of course, there'll never be any charge for these. It's just great to be able to share these experiences with you. And you may not be on the river. You may be heading to the river. You may be going to work. But perhaps you're getting a sense of what a good day is all about. Thanks so much for listening.
The Fly Culture Podcast is brought to you in association with Fly Culture, a quarterly published magazine owned and run by fly anglers. When it comes to fly fishing, we've got you covered.